Hello, everyone. Welcome to Right Off Track, the podcast where we explore the remarkable journeys of individuals who have dared to embrace unconventional paths on their personal success journey. Today, we're thrilled to introduce you to Garett Renon, a former gym owner and personal trainer with over 20 years of experience in the fitness industry. Garett's journey took an unexpected turn as he embarked on a profound exploration of plant medicines and spiritual herbalism. For the past 6 years, he's been immersing himself in the world of plant medicines, uncovering their healing properties and spiritual insights. But Garett's journey doesn't stop there. This unique experience challenges conventions and leads to unparalleled personal growth and understanding. And there's more. Garett is also the host of the podcast, The Deeper You Go, The Weirder It Gets. This podcast is a portal of self-discovery, a quest for reaching our highest potential, and a dive into the very fabric of our reality. So let's embrace an open mind to a different perspective. Get ready to expand your horizons, embrace your unique journey, and tap into your limitless potential. If Garett can explore these uncharted territories, why not you? And without further ado, welcome to the show, Garett.
Thank you. Excited to be here.
I'm so excited. I want to share a little bit of a deeper context on this episode. So you were actually my personal trainer, and we did kickboxing back in the day.
Yeah, we met in my gym, and we did personal training for at least a year, if not longer.
Yeah. You're like, we need to increase that booty strength. Squats, squats, squats.
Exactly.
I don't know if it's gotten that much better. I need that help. But since then, so much has happened in your life, in my life, and I'm just really fascinated by the quest you have undertaken. So I know there's a lot to share, but could you give us a glimpse into how you went from being in the fitness industry and then being a gym owner and now to where you are now on this incredible quest?
Yeah. So it was actually kind of a very wild ride, and some of it was on purpose and some of it necessarily wasn't on purpose. As you know, I had a gym for 7 years. It was a kickboxing gym and strength training gym, and did a lot of personal training, and we were very successful. But there was a issue. One of the things was is we were part of a franchise, and it was a younger franchise. And to kind of make a very long story kind of shorter, is we ended up in our 7th year of operation kind of started to butt heads with the uh, gym owner, or the franchisor. And so long story short, lawsuits started getting thrown around.
Oof.
And I kind of, my whole life fell apart. I ended up losing the gym, ended up getting a divorce, ended up basically losing everything I had, and had to go through bankruptcy, and so essentially went through like 3 years of hell. And but there's always a bright side to things like this. Is one of the things is it freed me up to then start a new life, so to speak. And so as I was going through this, I had kind of started to get involved in plant medicines right before all this went down. And as I was embarking and beginning this plant medicine journey, it really struck me as kind of the missing piece in a lot of human potential and human development. That's why I had the gym in the first place. Was one, I love fitness, but I love helping people become the strongest version of themselves, and I love helping people become the best version of themselves. And in that gym fitness journey, I always felt like there was something missing as far as the mental component, and then even the spiritual component. I see it as like the mental, the spiritual, and the physical. So anyway, when I lost everything, I kind of had this decision, well, what do I do with my life? Do I go back into the fitness industry? And I thought about that. I probably could have been successful. I had a lot of clients and a lot of people that were still supporting me, but I felt like I needed to do more. I needed to go deeper into self-discovery. And so plant medicine kind of seemed like the path for that, to not only develop myself, but then also learn about that, and then figure out how I can bring that missing component in to my life and then help get back on track, so to speak, of helping people become better versions of themselves.
Oh my gosh. So much has happened. I honestly didn't even know everything that has happened. I mean, I had a sense that a lot has changed since I last saw you. And I know that we were both in touch when the whole situation of the gym happened and the transition
Mm-hmm.
happened and some of that. So thank you for sharing authentically a full story and kind of the values that shaped and kind of the potential. So I'm really curious, like the journey that got you into this whole plant herbalism space, right? I don't feel like
Mm-hmm.
you go out inside from your normal day to like, oh, you know what? I'm fascinated with herbs and herbal medicine and nature. How do I
Yeah.
take that one step further? Do you mind sharing like what got you into this space?
Yeah. I mean, so, well, one of the things that I'm working with, one of the particular plant medicines is ayahuasca.
Mm-hmm.
And that actually popped up on my radar screen close to 10 years ago. And back then, it's probably even longer now, but back then, nobody really knew what it was. And
Mm-hmm.
now it's a lot more popular, and most people have at least heard about it, even if they've never done it.
Right.
Um, but like I had mentioned, I've always been fascinated in reaching your full potential and maximizing this human experience. And
Mm-hmm.
so I was hearing some very fascinating stories about people going down to the jungle, drinking this very interesting tasting tea, and then having these life altering experiences and coming back being completely changed and having new motivation and new insight. And um, a lot of hearing of people of starting businesses or completely transforming their life for the better. And so at the time, my life was still pretty good, but as we know, it can always be better. And so I figured I want to try this. So I kind of
Mm-hmm.
just went strictly out of curiosity. I learned later on in my journey that a lot of this is for it's for a lot of things, but a lot of people do it for healing of certain traumatic events. I never reached out for it because of that. It was just strictly out of curiosity. But then once I got into that world, I realized it was a whole universe and
Mm-hmm.
university of information. So then I just became more and more fascinated with what it was.
Absolutely. And for anybody listening, like whatever your experience has been around the space, like I invite you to have an open mind because to me, like it's actually interesting too. You said like there's been a lot more interest in this space, like, and now when I'm growing my connection, I have like a PhD student who is studying like psychedelics and effects of things like ayahuasca on the human brain,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like we are so open and very accustomed to being exposed to medicines like drugs that we don't fully understand given over the counter or prescribed to us. I'm like, okay, yeah, cool. And
Mm-hmm.
no worries about the million side effects that could potentially be exposed
Right.
to us. But
Right.
then I'm like, oh, no, but not that stuff. Not that
Right.
stuff that's like psychedelic or like ayahuasca because it's out there. And so if you're listening to this and like that's your perception, I totally can respect that. But I also invite you to have an open mind, like what is potentially a different perspective? Where can that be healing? And it may not be right for everybody. Like I haven't tried it. I have my own, like, I'm like, that sounds scary. Interesting. That's scary, you know?
Yeah.
But that's why I want to have these conversations to explore, like, how has that helped you? If you don't mind, kind of what's the potential there that you're trying to uncover and help others with?
Well, I mean, the potential there is limitless, and I don't even think we've scratched the surface on what the potentials of this are.
Mm-hmm.
um One of the things that you kind of mentioned was, I mean, you take our look at our normal society, our everyday society, and it is not a healthy society by any stretch of the imagination. It's A lot of people are very soul sick. A lot We got obesity is rampant. Go downtown to any major city, drug abuse, depression, mental illness. Um, yeah, it's just so like our society is very sick, and our doctors and our medical system are completely out of touch with reality. um they just provide you a pill. They're essentially drug dealers that just provide you a pill to mask these symptoms, and they never And most of the pharmaceuticals that people get just numb you, they turn you off, they desensitize you to the reality of your life, and that's, they just put a band-aid on a bullet hole. And so yeah, the potential is huge as far as helping you discover who you are, getting to the root of your issues. We all have issues, we all have traumas, and um putting a band-aid on a bullet hole is not going to solve the issue. You got to figure out, hey, why do I keep getting shot? And so
Metaphorically, hopefully
right,
metaphorically.
yeah, hopefully metaphorically, but you never know these days.
Yeah.
um so yeah, so that's kind of it, is to help, and also to realize that um we have everything we need on this in our lives. The earth can provide for it. All the medicines, all the pharmaceuticals, where do you think they come up with this stuff? They're all
Yeah.
derivatives of plant medicines, but what they've done is they've gone down and they've bastardized what these things are, and they've extracted certain key elements, forgetting about the whole holistic approach of the full plant, and then actually the holistic approach of diet and exercise and all that, everything, making it a whole complete package.
Hmm.
So
And
yeah.
can I respectfully like listen to everything. I want to add like I do respect like people in the profession of medicine. Like I do respect like medicine has a place. So like my personal stance, like I don't advocate for people listening to be like, oh, like, stop what you're doing and don't go. And we can disagree on that. That's totally fine, right?
Yeah.
But where that's totally fine. My stance is like, why can't we empower one another, right? Like I believe that people want, especially in the medical profession, want to help people with the tools they have available. And it's just like, how can we power, understanding and knowledge from the earth and some of the things that could be gained there and not be apprehensive, like, and just favor one side or another? Can we find a balance where we're helping everybody who wants to help others, like whether it be medical professionals, and also utilizing what we have available? I also find it fascinating, like oftentimes if we are skeptical about these things, but there's so much ancient wisdom to it. Like, right? Like not everything that's old is irrelevant. Like we focus on like what's in the moment, what's right now, what's trendy.
Mm-hmm.
But then you go back to different cultures with generation of wisdom around, whatever it is, like using medicine, using herbal stuff that helps. And like that's fascinating to me that like we favor the new and the trendy things while forgetting that there's also really insightful power and like ancient wisdoms that have worked and have been tried by people.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point, and I think that's one of the issues we have with our society, especially in this technologically advanced society that we have, that we think that we are on the precipice of human development and human understanding of things. But like I said, the proof is in the pudding. And yeah, there's several people doing well, but the majority of the population is not doing well.
Yeah.
Depression, suicide, like it's a very sick society. So um, we need to kind of step back and kind of suppress our egos and thinking that we have it all figured out, and go back to some of these ancient um, ways. And depending on what you believe, and how far of a deep rabbit hole you want to go down, but there's a lot of belief that some of these ancient civilizations might have even been more advanced than we are
Mm-hmm.
today. I mean, you take a look at the pyramids of Egypt, and Mexico and South America and Central America, and some of these ancient technologies. And we have no idea what these things really are, and we have no idea how to even build these things today. We have these very general uh, concepts and ideas that are taught to us by schools that are ran by the system. And we think that just because someone with some letters behind their name told us, oh, this is what it was, we believe that's what it is. But so I mean, I think uh, one, we have to kind of, all of us have to take a step back and remove our ego. And I think, to kind of answer your question, there can be a middle ground. But one of my favorite quotes, I got a lot of favorite quotes, but one of
I love
them
it.
is, uh, the road to hell is sometimes paved with good intentions. And
Yeah.
so I think, and I'm not saying, and there are some things that modern medicine can help with, not a lot. I mean, really I'm staying away from most of it unless I get into some major car accident and I need some reconstructive surgery or something. But um, other than that, or whatever. But I think, it's not necessarily the individual doctor's faults. I mean, they get into it for the right reasons. This is where that quote comes in. They get
Mm-hmm.
in it for the right reasons because they want to help people and they want people to become healthier. But it's a whole system of um, they get into a lot of debt going through medical school, a lot of debt, and then you have the whole American Medical Association, and so then oftentimes it's a system, and you get trapped in this system where all of a sudden you come out of medical school and you're $500,000 in debt, and if you don't play ball, then you will not be able to get a job to then pay off these debts, and so then you kind of get stuck in this system. And then like I said, there's an ego aspect of people not wanting to admit, hey, maybe I'm wrong, or maybe there can be other ways. So um there is a balance, but I think it takes everyone an understanding to be like, and how do I help
Mm-hmm.
find that balance, and um taking an honest look of, well, maybe the things I'm doing are not right, or maybe there's other ways, or maybe there's a way to use both plants and
Yeah,
pharmaceuticals, but you have to be open to it and not immediately on either side just say, oh, this is no good.
absolutely. I think
I don't
that
know if
they say
that's
like
making
this.
sense.
It does. I think they say like the sign of an intelligent person is the ability to take in information and like not accept it all as truth,
Yes,
right?
I
And
love that
especially in a
quote.
society where we have like, well, I'm paraphrasing probably, but in society where there's so much information, like whatever you think about like this topic, like it's just powerful to like think for yourself, right? Take what you get, test it out, apply it to your life, like make your own decisions by testing information and not accepting it for truth just because of fancy titles or whatever, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
it has to even like different medicines, like even different herbal medicines, probably going to be responding differently to individual's body, right? So even in this sense, like that something could be good, there's also an individual factor to it to test out and see what's resonating with you, your body, your soul, wherever you're at in life, right?
Right. And, you have to be, and like I said, some people, it's not their fault they're getting trapped in these systems, but you have to open your eyes to the reality of things like pharmaceutical companies, and that it's a billions-dollar industry, and it makes a lot of money, and it profits off of people getting sick and keeping people sick. And um, I mean, unless you're living under a rock, and especially what's happened over the last few years, you can tell that what was going on was never about health. It was never about helping you become better. It was about keeping the money train rolling with these pharmaceutical companies. And then you look at a lot of the fines they've had to pay, and a lot of just the actual reality about side effects, and these things just get suppressed because people don't want to open their eyes to it, and then the mainstream media. And so it takes an effort for you to look outside, to think outside the box and look outside the box.
I was talking to somebody, and just like she's developing her farm and doing this amazing work, and I was just marveling how much wisdom there is in nature without us even talking about this conversation. But they talk about how your mental health, just being exposed to nature, helps your mental health, right? Regularly going out and seeing greenery and that surrounding in
Mm-hmm.
itself can be healing, right? Different cultures, I think the Japanese culture embraces that, where you go in like in nature and that helps you heal. But also, like I do think about, especially they say, like if you sing to a plant, right? Like how you talk to a plant will influence how it grows. So like something
Mm-hmm.
so simple, like, and you can look it up. Like they talk about how if you play music to a plant, it will grow better. If you take two seeds and one you talk negatively and then you talk positive, like they will grow differently, right? So
Mm-hmm.
something that we take for granted, like, oh, it's just a plant. Like, and I'm not saying like I'm going to stop eating plants or whatever, but I'm saying there is higher wisdom in the world. And it's just interesting to see that perspective. And there's also like inspiration that I take, like I think about trees, right? And we talk about like how if a tree is nimble, it's flexible by its structure, it's more likely to be resilient to stresses of the wind and whatnot. And it reminds me
Mm-hmm.
of also just metaphors that we take into our life, like whatever you believe about that derive from nature, or you compare it to like a tree that's very stiff and rigid, and that means it's actually more susceptible to getting destroyed by any kind of strong winds because it can't withstand that. So where there's different levels of inspiration from like just actual like research and things that seeing how nature responds to certain things, which is incredible, to just driving metaphors from nature, like, oh, that's peaceful. Or sometimes like I go outside when I'm super overwhelmed and I go up on this beautiful little scenery place, like which I'm grateful to have. But then you're like, I'm really a little speck of nothing. Like that
Right.
mountain is gonna care what I'm doing. And sometimes it's nice to feel insignificant around this nature that has this internal wisdom and is
Mm-hmm.
self replenishing, self-serving. It's there without your presence and will be there. And it's kind of also healing to just like quiet your craziness, whatever you think about this. Like there's so much to drive from nature and its
Right.
wisdom.
Right. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot there. What you said, one of the aspects is stress. Um, Being in nature, connecting with nature, getting out, going camping, grounding, putting your feet in the ground, disconnecting from the crazy city life significantly lowers your stress. And one of the things I see with people, these quote unquote high performers, they're doing all these fantastical things at their job and all that stuff, but they are just bombarded with stress and they're always on their computer and always checking email and doing all this kind of stuff. And anytime you get someone like that and you put them out into nature and um, you're able to you always feel better, you immediately feel better, you sleep better. And one thing I should say is like, and we can get into this a little later, I'm doing a social diet which is not typical. So typically, especially if you do like a 2 week or a 1 month sama, typically you go down to the jungle and you stay down there at a center and you stay in a little jungle hut with no electricity and no Wi-Fi. And again, it's just to connect you to the frequencies of
Mm-hmm.
nature, and that in itself is very healing and just allowing you to just recharge and connect. Like, see, one of the problems we have is we think are a part of nature, or we think we're separate from nature, when the
Yeah.
reality is we are nature, and we are just as connected to nature as the plants or any of the animals, but we've completely removed ourselves from that. And
Yeah.
again, that's why we're so soul sick. But one of the interesting things that you mentioned about singing to plants and then that can actually help them grow, well, in the Shipibo tradition, we sing in
Mm-hmm.
ceremony, and you sing and the plants are coming through you, and that's how you
Mm-hmm.
express the energetic energies of the plants, is through singing, because everything is energy and everything is frequency and vibration. And
Yeah.
your voice is a way of projecting it's way of taking energetic frequencies and spiritual aspects and manifesting them into the physical world. So
Mm-hmm.
not only does singing to your plant help it grow better or talking to it positively, but that's how the Shipibo interact with plants. So um that's extremely that's really cool. And then one other thing I just kind of wanted to say, yeah, it's good to get into nature and feel insignificant, but I also feel like there's a balance there of, if you connect with nature, you feel a part of it, and you actually are not insignificant, that you are a part of this ecosystem. And I sometimes think that like this idea of feeling insignificant is not a good way to always look at things, because then it can lead down a path of like, well, I'm so small that nothing I do matters, but everything you do matters. You are a part of a very delicate ecosystem. And so sometimes I think it's better to like, and I
Mm-hmm.
understand what you're saying, but I think it's sometimes better to be like, no, I am a part of this, and everything I do, from my thoughts to my intentions to how I treat my neighbor to how I live my life, this all matters, and it has a ripple effect.
Yeah. How's your singing voice?
It's very interesting, because I've never had any musical talent my entire life. And I remember doing one of the first times I did a ceremony and was listening to the singing. And I should say I mean, some people do sing very beautiful, but it's
Mhm.
more chanting.
Right.
Um, um, and having it sound beautiful is not the purpose, but obviously everyone wants it to sound beautiful, and it does
Right.
sound beautiful, especially if you can, even though it may not, like if I were to be like, hey, here's my new song, and you just listen to it, you might be like, that's not very good. But given the context, like if you were
Yeah.
on the medicine and you could feel the power of the plants and you could feel the power behind my voice and what it was doing, then you'd be like, oh, that's the most beautiful thing you've ever heard. But
Yeah.
it's been a work in progress. And yeah, I remember when I kind of had the idea that I wanted to do this, I was always like, there was part of me that was like, I want to do this just to see if I can do it. Can I
Yeah.
like actually sing to a room full of people and not have them like their ears start bleeding or something? And but no, it's like I said, I'm not going to necessarily impress anyone with a angelic voice, but I think
America's Got Talent.
yeah, I'll probably skip that. But
New version, new version.
but I think if you heard it, I think you would be like, hey, that's all right. I can
Yeah.
feel the, you know, I mean, at the very least, my version of success would be like if you heard me singing in that context, I would more be like not so much caring how you thought of my voice as opposed to being like, no, that, oh my God, I feel way better. Or as you were
Yeah.
singing, this whole universe opened up and I got all these insights about my life. And so that's always the goal.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's power in like having these conversations and showing like what is no longer serving us. Because there's a lot that's no longer serving us, and we're in the habit of just keeping at it because that's how it's been. Ultimately, the detriment is to ourselves, right? So if we actually reflect and just be like, hey, it's okay if I change, because why? Like, there's a whole stagnant, and I'll wrap up. Like, there's a whole sense of like stagnancy that we should be like, where do you want to be when you grow up? As if we're like one point of defined life kind of status when we grow up, and we're that person. Like, no, we're always growing, we're always evolving. It's just a fallacy to say like there's kind of a completion point, and that's who we need to be at all times. So embrace this process of exploration wherever it might take you. It will probably be different from myself or from Garett or anybody else on the podcast. But again, there's huge power in understanding what does no longer serve you. So if that's one thing that you take away, explore that and let us know what you think. And Garett, I really appreciate your time, your authenticity. Best of luck to you wrapping up the Sama. I look forward to updates on that. And for everybody joining us, thank you so much for coming right off track with us. We look forward to having you on another adventure with us. Take care.